So, if you don't know, we are in a series called Rethink. And grace has allowed us to rethink a lot of things. And one of those things is church. We talked a little bit about it last week. We're going to talk a little bit more about it this week. But our slogan here at Grace Orlando is defining grace and redesigning church. And I'll tell you, with any type of redesign, a lot of the times people are hesitant. They're resistant because a lot of people just in general don't like change. Did you know that? I don't like change. I don't even always like change in my routine of my day. I like some kind of routine. Even if it's the routine to not have a routine, that's what I like, right? So there's an old saying in the trades that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And before any redesign happens, people must acknowledge that something isn't working and that change must happen. How many of you have ever heard of Kmart? Has anybody ever heard of Kmart before? Who has never heard of Kmart before? Is there anybody in here? I just want to see. Okay, all right. So we're at least older than 12, so that's good. So Kmart is the only store left in America is actually in Miami right now, which I didn't even know there was one that was in existence. But I used to work at Walmart from the years of 1998 to 2003, and I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes. We had meetings every day where we would find out stats, and they would talk about some of our competitors. And during those years, Walmart was on the rise, and Kmart was on a fast track to nowhere. And we had been told behind the scenes, at some point in time, their CEO, at the pinnacle of when they were making the most money, had announced to everyone to not change anything, to stay with what they were doing, that they had arrived where they arrived because of the things they were doing, and not to change at all. And unfortunately, you can see that lack of change ultimately determined their destiny, which is one in America, which is crazy. I mean, if I told you how many, they had a lot, thousands and thousands of stores. I found this article, it's really good. It says, Kmart, once a retail powerhouse akin to today's Walmart, lost its luster when it failed to adapt to the changing ideas of commerce. The rise of e-commerce platforms like Amazon caught Kmart unprepared. It missed the chance to jump into the online market believing that e-commerce wasn't the future, and the consequence a stark contrast to the success stories of those who looked ahead and invested in the changing times. Walmart's success stood as a testament to adapting and foreseeing future trends. Its pivot to embrace e-commerce allowed it to thrive, leaving Kmart behind, and the Kmart parking lots, once packed with shoppers, now lie desolate, a haunting reminder of how businesses suffer when they fail to evolve. Kmart is a reminder that staying stagnant while the world evolves leads to decline and eventual disappearance. The tale of Kmart serves as a vivid example, echoing the importance of forward-looking strategies and the ever-evolving landscape of business. Now, the story of Kmart's downfall, once a giant in retail but now a memory, serves as a poignant reminder that the adaptability and embracing change are crucial for any enterprise aiming to thrive in the dynamic business world. At the end of the day, and we talked about this when I worked for Walmart, but at the end of the day, Kmart lacked the willingness to change when they needed to rethink what they had been doing. And change can be scary, change can be very uncomfortable, and I'm not in the camp, I don't know about you, I know some grace teachers are, but I'm not in the camp that I believe that church just needs to be burned to the ground. I've heard a lot of people say that, like church it just needs to be eradicated, we don't need church. I'm not that guy. But if something is unhealthy, I want to make it to where it's healthy. I want to be a part of removing the unhealth. I want to see it succeed, honestly, I do. I want to see church succeed. But the only way I know to do it is to help redesign it. That's the only way. And that means there will be things that must change about it. That means we have to talk about things that we have never talked about before. A redesign means that we will look differently, we will sound differently, and even act differently than a lot of other churches. And that is okay. It really is. It's okay. The number one way I think that we are changing church as we know it is we're changing the belief that church is a requirement. Church is not a requirement. There's not one scripture that supports going to a building, to hear from God, to be with God so that God will be with you, to be more spiritual, or to earn anything from God. There's no scripture that supports that thinking. So if it's not a requirement, I have asked this question over the years. I don't know if you've asked this question, but I've asked, well, then why church? Why do we even get together? I think a better question is, what kind of place do we want church to look like so that people would want to be there? That's my type of thinking. I want to know, what type of place do we want it to look like? So some of you may know, some of you may not know, but recently we fixed up the youth room. I think we've talked about it a couple weeks now, but we got the youth room all fixed up. And my wife and I kind of spearheaded some of that. We shared in the group effort, right, to figure out what worked best, how the room would be laid out and all those things. But we, along the way, and I've done many remodels with my wife over the years. We were in real estate together with her own family business and all that stuff. And I've done a lot of remodels together. And usually in those remodels, I don't know if you've ever done a remodel with your spouse, but you learn how different you are when you do those kind of things with your spouse. Did you guys know that? And Ruthie and I are very different. Like, I can walk into a dungeon and I can see potential. Whereas my wife will walk into a similar room and she has to wait until it's completely finished, until she decides whether she likes it or not. And that's how it was with this room. And right now, we're actually painting our house, okay? And I think, Brett helped us the other night, but I think we've painted the kitchen 5 times now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, mind you, it wasn't completely painted every single time, but enough paint to say that you painted it 5 times, okay? And we went from white to blue to light blue to gray, and then to white, and then back to blue, okay? And thank God we finally finished it on blue, and it's painted. We finished it yesterday, PTL, right? But something I realized about her is, yes, it has to be finished, it has to do all those things, but I realized in the process that the reason, and she said this a couple times, but the reason why we have to paint something so that she can see it is because she has to decide whether she likes it or not, okay? I'm not that way, but she is that way. And she actually helped me design this message. Because I got to thinking about it. When you remove all the requirements and all the demands and all the scriptures and all the things as to why we go to church, I don't really know what church should look like. I don't. If you take all those things out, I don't want to, and honestly, there's no YouTube video, there's no blueprint, there's no booklet that says, okay, when you take out the demand of having to go to church, what should church look like? There isn't something that church should look like. That's the short answer. I struggled with trying to figure these things out. And today, my goal is I want to work with you to eliminate what type of place that we don't want it to be, okay? I think I've landed there. So that we can find out what place that we want to be at, right? So I think that Ruthie taught me something that if we figure out what we don't like, then we can find out what we do like. Isn't that awesome that she taught me those lessons? I just didn't know it all those years that she was teaching me things. And now I know. Are you guys ready? So the first thing that we don't want to be a place is where we're not allowed to ask questions. Honestly, I think that is the number one thing that we don't want to be, is where we're not allowed. I've been to a lot of places where you're not allowed to ask questions. In fact, I was raised not allowed to ask questions, not by my parents, but in churches. I heard a teacher once say, it was an amazing teacher, once say that there's no such thing as a dumb question, only dumb people. Great quote. Don't know who that teacher was, but that was genius. A fellow genius is Albert Einstein. Wouldn't you say that he's pretty smart? He had a few great quotes about questions. He said the important thing is not to stop questioning. He also said, never lose holy curiosity. And then I love this last one. He said, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. Unfortunately, Christians asking questions is rare. It's really rare. I don't know why that is. I believe fear is the number one reason that Christians don't ask more questions. I remember when we were first dating, Ruthie and I remember when we were first dating and we went to a place out in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Utica Square. Some of you might know Utica Square, right? Great place to eat, lots of restaurants. And we were in Bible school, and we were just dating. We were at P.F. Chang's. Don't know if you've been to P.F. Chang's. Great restaurant. And in P.F. Chang's, I don't know if they still have this, but they had this mural on the back wall. And she's looking at the mural. I could tell she was kind of daydreaming, kind of thinking to herself. And then she asked me a question. And she said, why is it that we think we're right about all the things that we think? And I remember, like, don't lean into that, Ruthie. Like, that is a dangerous question. We're dating, we're kind of headed in the direction of marriage. You start asking those questions. And honestly, I was really afraid. I didn't want her to ask those questions. I'd kind of already solved those for myself. But I was afraid that if she started to doubt, then she was going to lose her faith because she was asking those questions. And I think now that I believe the way I do, I actually think questions will strengthen your faith. I believe that. I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Jamie Englehart. I've heard Clark quote from him a couple times. Friends with him on Facebook. Every now and then he makes a great post. But he wrote this just a few days ago. He said, I hear and read a lot of my generation and older telling millennials and Gen Z to be careful because of all the questions they ask. Yet how we learn is by the asking of questions, and God is not intimidated by our asking. And Jesus was the master at it. He was asked, Jesus, over 150 questions, and he only answered less than a dozen, and asked over 300 more. The only time I seem to get into trouble and asking questions or opening up dialogue is from my age or older, or the younger ones who have been religiously indoctrinated. Yet I can talk with most in this younger generation about almost anything, and they don't freak out. This is the information age, and anything we want to know is at our fingertips, and we no longer have an excuse to be ignorant or unlearned about things. He said, I love millennials, and I am almost 58, and I feel like I fit in more with their generation than much of my own in the way they think about many things, and I love how they question the status quo. He said, I want to encourage those in my generation and older to not view the questions as a personal attack. And please don't use the touch not God's anointed card. Instead, go on a journey of discovery with them. And above all else, if you don't have an answer, then just say, I don't know. Because they will respect that more than you faking it. Leslie was in the back a couple weeks ago. I don't know exactly what day, and I don't know exactly if there was a group of people, but I know she got into a conversation with my youngest, Annabelle. And somewhere along the lines, I think Annabelle was kind of talking with her and asking if it was okay to doubt, right? And because she'd seen that there was people in the Bible that doubted, and she wanted to know, like, is it okay to doubt about God? And Leslie actually said, she said, it really is okay to doubt. Those are okay things to do. She said that there was a time period that Jesus actually, if you think about it, he let all the disciples doubt for a little while. Like, he could have gone right to them, but he waited days before he went and reached out to Thomas and reached out to Peter. And I don't think Jesus freaked out about their doubting. I don't think he did. Some scholars, this is interesting, some scholars believe that the name Thomas wasn't actually his real name, but a nickname that Jesus gave him. Thomas actually means twin. It means divided, and it also means skeptic one. It would be interesting if he got this name because he was good at asking questions. We don't want to be a place where we're not allowed to ask questions. We don't want to also be a place where we all look exactly the same. I know a guy that was attending here a while back, and he went and visited a really big church out in California. It was a legalistic church, and he visited them on Sunday, and he came back, and he said, Matt, we had coffee after he came back. He goes, this church was amazing. He said they all looked the same. They all dressed the same. They all got the same haircut. They all carried their Bibles in their right hand. He said their women walked behind them. Their kids walked behind them. They all said amen when the preacher talked. He said they were just in sync. They all voted the same, did all the same things. And I just thought, we will never be that. But I did not open my mouth. I kept my mouth quiet. I'm like, cool, man. I'm glad for them. And if you think about it, have you ever thought about who Jesus hung out with? None of those people were the same. There was a doctor in the midst. There was a fisherman. There was multiple fishermen. One of the fishermen was actually a zealot that oppressed. He was kind of like a terrorist towards the Romans. And that's why you know who that is. It's Peter. Peter was actually a zealot. He was waiting on Jesus to take back the kingdom. That's why he chopped that guy's ear off at the end, right? Those people didn't look the same. Jesus didn't surround himself with people that all looked the same. Often we skip over those descriptions, but I want our church to look differently, to think differently, to vote differently, to talk differently. I want to be a place for all the misfits, the outcast, the rejected, the religious. I want to be a place where we can have attract those people. To not only be here, but to be a part of what we're doing. I attended a youth group when I was younger over in the Melbourne area. It was a great church, did a lot of great things for us. But we started to get involved in the church, and because of my decisions, they were outward decisions, it made me look really good to those that are in leadership. I was able to make choices, and those choices reflected whether I was capable of leadership or not. And so I was elevated to leadership in this youth group, in this church, pretty well. And they celebrated me. They'd let me give testimonies all the time, all those things, right? My family wasn't super good at that. My mom wasn't super good at that. My sisters weren't. My sisters were a little more rambunctious, a little more louder. My mom smoked, right? And it was really sad because they looked at them and they disgraced them. They wouldn't let them be involved. I remember she wanted to get involved in the kids' church, right? And she told me the other day, she said, it's really interesting. She said the church would let me clean the church, but wouldn't let me check in the children. It's kind of sad, right? Same with my sisters. My sisters have great leadership qualities, but because they didn't look the part, they didn't act the part, they weren't elevated to places of leadership. I was really good at faking it till I make it. My mom and my sisters, they weren't. They weren't as good at that part. They were real. And it was sad to watch the same church hold my mom and my sisters back from helping because they couldn't live up to the standards of that church. I don't want to be a place like that, right? I want to be a place where we can find the good in people. And there's good in everyone, if you just look. Where we all don't look the same. I don't want to be that church. We don't want to be a place where we're not allowed to push each other. Do you know that we kind of push each other here? I remember one time when I lived in Melbourne, I grew up close to the beach, and we would go to the beach with me and my friends, and I dug this hole, right? And then I hopped in it, and my friends all pushed the sand in it, and one of my, I had like 5 of them, one of my friends thought he was going to come over and shove me out, right? Like shove me over and hurt me. Well, because I was planted, I was able to fling my friend over, and then another friend came over, and I threw that friend, and then we spent like half an hour of them trying to push me and me throw them the whole time. It was like 30 minutes of that nonsense, right? We looked crazy. But we liked that. We liked pushing each other. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you don't want to be pushed, this might not be the right place, right? We've all been pushed. We're kind of pushy in that way. There are plenty of places where you can find where they will affirm your beliefs. They will make you feel good on the way out. We want to make people feel good on the way out, but we like to push a little bit. I've been a part of all those kind of churches. I've helped lead them. They are a dime a dozen. I moved here so that I could be pushed, right? Clark pushed me years ago in a lot of different areas. Even before I moved here, he was pushing me. And I thought, I'd rub shoulders with all the religious. I want to rub shoulders with people that are going to push me. Clark pushed me in the areas of grace, in the areas of God's love, in the area of hell, in the area of salvation. That was kind of pushy of him, but I actually liked it. If you guys know who Alan Chambers is, he pushed me in the area of the conversation about gay people. And that was very difficult for me because I thought I'd made up my mind about that. And it's not like he had a conversation with me. It's not like he told me, hey, we got to have a talk. He just was himself. He was real. And that's honestly what I'm looking for in a church. That's honestly what I look for all the time. And if you're real, you can push me all day long. Change my mind. Gabe, who works in the youth area, he was also pushy with me. He's different than I am. We think very different about a lot of things. But he shoved me and pushed me unintentionally, but just as a friend. And I've pushed him, right? He showed me new perspectives. And if you know me, when I make up my mind, it's very difficult to get me to change my mind. My wife calls it Seifert pride. I call it a gift. We are a pushy bunch. Sometimes we push and we don't even know that we push. And different people over the years have decided that they didn't want to be pushed, and that makes me really sad. But I found that being pushed isn't always a bad thing. I love pushing people. Those around me every day, they know at some point in time I'm going to push you. And they push me too. I know that I could probably stay home, I could probably watch online, I could probably get out a lot of things. But I have found that there is wisdom in a multitude of counselors. I have found that I need fellowship with other people. I need to get around people that are going to help me with my perspective. And I don't see a lot of the people that are online that have all their YouTube channels and they're trying to learn and grow and all that. There's an element that's missing about that. Now, you guys have probably heard me talk about, but I used to work in construction. And for the first 2 years, I was kind of just thrown out there, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever worked for construction, but that a lot of the time, that's what they do with the greenhorns. So you're just kind of survival of the fittest, right? And they threw me out there, and I kind of figured out a bunch of things on how to fix things, and I didn't really know how to do a lot those first 2 years. I was just kind of trying things. And the third year, a guy named Jeff Washington came and worked with me. Now, Jeff Washington was 50 years old. I think I was 23 at the time. He'd been in and out of prison. Black guy that was probably 5'2", but could bench press 450 pounds. He was just a monster, right? But been in and out of prison his whole life. Came to know the Lord at a later in his years, but was a master at construction. And I started rubbing shoulders with this guy, and he was so funny. He'd walk over to me, and he'd say, "So why are you doing it that way?" And I'd say, "Is there a better way to do it? I don't know." And so he'd come over, he'd show me how to do whatever I'm doing, and he'd fix it. He'd push me, he'd shove me. He actually brought chisels to the job site, and I was like, "What are those?" He showed me how to work with chisels. I didn't even know that people worked with chisels. I had no clue, right? But he excelled me about 10 years beyond where I was at the time. And when I was by myself, I wasn't making any progress. And I look at that as this is one of the reasons why I think that we come to church, is to be around each other, to push each other, to be like, "Hey, why are you doing it that way? Why are you thinking that way?" And so I look at that as that's actually a really healthy thing. There's something about hanging with other Christians and having conversations that speeds up growth that may have taken a really long time. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I hadn't talked to them in years. And we started having conversations, and the same thing even over the phone, kind of dissecting different things that I think that they had been processing and I had been processing on my own. And what I'm trying to say is I think that we can do more together than we can separately. I really do believe that. The last thing, I won't keep you too late for Mother's Day, but the last thing is we don't want to be a place where we fit the mold. I don't know about you, but I don't fit molds very well. I was actually kicked out of Christian school when I was younger, if you can believe that. I know, it's just so shocking. But something you may not know about me, I've done some deep dives on personalities, right? A lot of personality tests. I've taken a lot of personality tests. I've done deep dives on different personalities, and I found out some things along the way about my own personality. And in my own personality, right, I found out that I am perfect for tearing systems down that oppress people and rebuilding systems in a way that are beneficial to people. Right? And one way that we've already done this as a church is we've had the speaker rotation. How many of you guys know that we do that here? Next week we'll have somebody else, the following week we'll have somebody else. We do that. And what's sad is people have left the church because they only want one speaker every single week. Right? And we're currently redesigning this model in every area of the church. We really are. We're working on it. And what you might say right now is you might say, "Well, Matt, that sounds like absolute chaos." I would say it's absolute controlled chaos. Matthew, there needs to be one guy in charge, just like a company has a CEO. And look, I'm not saying I don't make major decisions here, but honestly, I think it's very unhealthy for any church to have one person up there every single week. I don't know if you ever watch the news, but churches across America are having scandals one after another, with people that I respect and love dearly. I have friends just taken out for reasons that are worth taking people out or whatever, some are not. And I relate this problem to an improper design. I think it's improper to lift one person up and to worship that one person, to say, he's got to write the oracles of God so that I can hear from God every single week. I think that's improper. I like the changing of a guard in every ministry. I do. It's healthy. It keeps people from building kingdoms. There's only one kingdom, and that is the kingdom of God. I guess there's the Magic Kingdom, and there's the United Kingdom, but you know what I mean. The church is you. The church is me. You know, Paul dealt with this trouble. And I have a few verses that I'm going to read to you that communicate that. Now, because it's Mom's Day, I thought that we would read from the best translation, the Gen Z Bible today. Here we go. Verse 3, it says, "You're still stuck in a worldly mindset because there's jealousy and arguing and cliques among you, and aren't you acting like everyone else?" Verse 4, he said, "Dude, some say I'm with Paul, and others say, nah, man, I'm Team Apollos. Are you guys being totally superficial? So, like, who even is Paul? And who's this Apollos dude? They're just like servants who helped you believe in God, you know? Just doing their thing like how the Lord made them to be. And I did my part by starting it. Apollos did his part by nurturing it, and God made it grow. So basically, the person doing the planting and the one doing the watering don't really matter. It's all about God who brings the growth. So like the one who does the planting and the one who waters, they're totally on the same team, you know? And like every person will totally get their own reward based on like how much effort they put in, no joke, because we're all on the hustle together with the big man upstairs. You're his top-notch crew, his masterpiece. So yeah, you can say we're like planted crops or the blueprints to his epic architectural project. Just saying, farming vibes, man. That's another thing. We don't want to take church too serious, sorry. The church has to look different than it is. It has to. One of my biggest pet peeves, I don't know if you have any pet peeves, I have one, but if I come into a company, if I come into a situation, and I ask somebody, why are we doing it this way? And they respond, because it's the way we've always done it, I lose my mind. I just can't handle that phrase. And I know it's silly, but I don't want to do church because that's what we've always done. To me, Kmart's downfall was because they were in a rut and they didn't want to change. And I believe Walmart's success was they were willing to rethink what they'd always done. They knew retail needed to be redesigned. And again, I hope I'm not uninspiring today because I didn't tell you what church should look like. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it's supposed to look like. I don't think Walmart knew that they would look like what they look like today. You think they did? You think they knew about the parking over on the side where the people drive through and they pick it up? They didn't know any of that. There's no way. But I think they knew what they didn't want to look like. And I know what I don't want church to look like.